And one of the recommendations that seems to be emerging is that we really need to look at collaborative regional strategies. We're going to put this out to the folks at this roundtable, but the kind of thinking that's gone into it so far is maybe there are initiatives that we need to embark on, and these are initiatives both perhaps amongst the agricultural areas, but also urban and rural kind of initiatives which bring urban and rural people together, which bring together some of the amazing and healthy community initiatives, things that, for example, the California Endowment works on passionately, especially in the other underserved areas. How do those kind of initiatives come together with some of the initiatives going on for agricultural viability? And another whole set that we will take a look at is it time to even look at the idea of a kind of an overarching entity that could help coordinate some of these initiatives and perhaps leverage investment. We have a Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Is it time for something like a Metropolitan Agricultural Commission? So that's some of the ideas that will be floated there, and we would invite those of you interested to contact me or American Farmland Trust and perhaps get involved. I don't know how I'm doing for my time here. A couple more minutes? The slideshow going around in circles? So that's on the regional scale. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about what some of the work that we're doing on the project scale. Many of you may already know about this sort of idea we had for agricultural parks. I was very lucky a number of years ago to be taken by some new urbanists to a little hilltop in Italy, and we were told to drink a big, delicious glass of Barolo and think big thoughts. So that wasn't hard to do in that setting. But here I was in this little hill town, and these hill towns are so clear in their distinction between what's urban and what's rural. I mean, for goodness sake, there's a medieval wall that divide the two, and while we don't have those clear-cut breaks between the urban and the rural, and certainly they're not clear-cut over there, the fact of the matter is. Nonetheless, there was this idea, sitting in this little town, that I looked out over these fields and really sensed, boy, those lands are both protecting and they're both protecting the city, and the city is protecting them. And so really started thinking about this idea of these rural areas as both containing and sustaining cities. And so this agricultural parks idea is that really on the project scale. So the basic idea that these are part parkland, part working agriculture, and the idea is it's a parcel which is secured and capitalized so that farmers can come in kind of farm ready. They don't have to come up with a lot of capital to get started. We actually run one of these on lands owned by the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission on 20 acres. It's been functioning and growing for about 5 years. There's another 5 years on the lease. Now, the SFPUC, the commission, is really investing heavily in the education programs being planned for that. So it's a small but working model and one we're learning from all the time. We're very fortunate to be working on an agricultural park, also on public lands, which is close by here, an extraordinary project called the Marshall Cottle Agricultural Park in the middle of San Jose, because a farmer, Mr. Lester, left 290 acres to the county and to state parks because he'd promised his mother that this land would always stay in agriculture and always stay in active agriculture. So the plan now is for a small park, and then for about 150 acres of active agriculture, which we hope will be made available through kind of a master farming arrangement to both beginning farmers and larger scale farmers, and happily cooperative extension. The plan is we'll be there in full force with 4-H and master gardeners, which will give a chance for Santa Clara County cooperative extension to, again, so have a more kind of centralized location. We've also done some agricultural park work, more on the conceptual side on private lands, where there's, one saying is, farming is the new golf course, or kind of thing, which I find a bit, I don't know, glib, but there's some truth to that. So we worked on one very interesting project in Solano County, a 2,000-acre specific plan, which allowed for 1 house per 5 acres. Now, if you could imagine 1 house per 5 acres spread out over 2,000, that's a pretty horrendous, low-density, agriculture-spoiling plan. this plan that they came up with, preserved 1,000 acres of grazing land, put all the housing into little units in a hamlet, and preserved another 450 acres of a farm over a number of parcels. So it was a pretty interesting arrangement in terms of how the easements worked and the legal aspects, but that's now called the Green Valley Agricultural Conservancy. Another project we worked on at the edge of the city of Davis was the Ostie Ranch, and did a feasibility study there with the following charge from the landowners. If we made some investments to make the 600 acres really local serving, converted to sustainable practices, maybe brought in a few more farmers and some adjunct uses, if we made those investments, where would we be in 20 years compared to where we are now with conventional agricultural leases? And we found that they could be in about the same place. And it's a very interesting model in a town like Davis, which is very interested in exploring the idea of community farm and a farm belt. To say, so is the land's right outside of the city? Could we think of it differently? Yes, we want to keep the 80-acre zoning and so on and so forth, but are there ways that that kind of farming that goes on there could be more focused towards the city? There was one other thing I just wanted to comment on, just going back for one moment to the larger scale, which is sort of the agricultural park idea on a broader scale. And maybe I passed over a few minutes ago when I was talking about the regional planning efforts. One way that some of these regional planning efforts are done in the urban areas, they look at these urban place types. There's a city center where there's multimodal and high density and intensely mixed use, and then this sort of goes out on a transit kind of basis out to suburban centers and smaller centers. Well, I think we might have something to learn from that way of looking at place types, and we've thought a little bit about, well, could there be agricultural place types? Is that a way of looking at ourselves or looking at agriculture? Could that be useful? And I was chatting about this with a funder and sort of saying, the place types, for example, are, very intensive urban agricultural areas, maybe less intensive agricultural areas, which are organized around a small rural town, which I think we certainly identified in the Bay Area Food Shed Assessment. It's a very vital piece of looking at the sustainability agriculture, what's happening in the small town, as well as in the lands around it. Often the investment needs, in fact, to be in that small town in the form of housing for labor or marketing, processing facilities or ag tourism facilities and that sort of thing. So one of the place types that I've also been really intrigued by is this thing called a non-urban buffer. So a non-urban buffer, if it's not urban, then what the heck is it? Well, maybe it used to be agriculture, and it's a place where often agriculture can be terribly compromised, but still could be promising. We need to keep cities apart for all the reasons we know, but the land in between can end up being kind of dead zones. So this funder challenged us to say, well, how could you turn that around? And I think we actually heard just today that we and collaborators will get funding to look at a significant non-urban buffer with the question, what would it cost and what would it take, politically and otherwise, to turn this non-urban buffer into a thriving agricultural conservancy that would both serve small farms and really be a significant contribution to the local food system. So I think this agricultural park model and this sort of broader agricultural conservancy has great promise. Obviously, the crux of its success is the financial plan, the management plan, and common interest between landowner, whether it be public or private, and the entity that's interested to come in and sort of develop agriculture in these kinds of circumstances. Well, my last point, really a promo, is just for a last project I want to bring up, and it is a project called the California Agricultural Almanac. We're very fortunate to receive funding from the California Department of Food and Agriculture's Specialty Crop Block Grant Fund. And we're working in collaboration with a wonderful public interest planning and mapping firm in San Francisco, Green Info Network, to develop this California Agricultural Almanac. And what it's planned to be is this interactive website which will list growing regions in California, what crops are grown there, and what the seasons are. And so it's been very interesting as we've gone county by county and try to identify really what are the growing regions, because they're not necessarily a town. It may be a valley, or it may be a ridge, or it may be identified by different names. So we're trying to understand what really are those places. Some places, like in the San Joaquin Valley, they are sort of identified by towns. It's the Dinuba area. But in other places, it's Chileno Valley, or it is Green Valley, or places like this. So we've made some pretty good progress on this so far, collecting also public data. And the idea for this is by degrees we can add sets of farmers. We showed this to CAF, and they were sort of excited that you could put all of CAF farmers, all of the organic farmers. It's supposed to be a kind of a platform which can be sort of customized for uses. So we'll be very excited to roll this out. And obviously the next step for us here is kind of a business plan. We don't want this to be another project that gets juicy after some grant funding and then has nowhere to go. So the business planning part of this is going to be really pretty important. But I really look forward to getting feedback from many of you as we develop this over the coming months. So, in conclusion, I think what unifies all of these projects and ideas is the very simple idea of urban-rural linkage, and that the vitality and viability of small farmers is one that you work so hard on making happen, and you really need all of society, all of the urban folks to be on board and on the same page. I think the other common element is that really I identify very strongly sustainable agriculture and this sort of multifunctional agriculture. There are many things, many needs that agriculture serves, from ecosystem services, cultural values being hugely important. And I think the more we understand that, the more we emphasize, the more we monetize that, the better we're going to be. Clearly, we all need to work holistically, as we really never have before, to address these urgent issues of climate change and public health and economic challenges. And I think, to me, California farmers and small California farmers are clearly at the very heart of the solutions that we're going to need. So thank you so very much.